Death has come to your little town.
You like scary movies?
Uh-huh.
What's your favorite scary movie?
True classic never goes out of style.
Have you checked the children?
Boogeyman! Who's the boogeyman? Boogeyman! Boogeyman! Boogeyman!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
Hello and welcome to the Talksomehorror podcast, where we talk about all things horror. I'm your host Corey, and I'm just your average gay aspiring filmmaker who loves scary movies. Beware, there will be spoilers, so if you don't mind those, let's talk some horror. Today we're going back to Detroit as we cover Don't Breathe, but before we get to that, I want to start a new segment of how I'm staying spooky myself. I'm recording this the day The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina Part 3 drops on Netflix, and it's one of my favorite shows currently that ties in with the horror genre. I wasn't a big fan of the sitcom, not that it's not good, it just didn't interest me. But I do enjoy the darker spin that The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina brings. Kind of reminds me a lot of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and things like that. So I'm super excited and I plan on binging it this weekend. I also plan on seeing The Turning today and recording a Patreon exclusive episode of me covering it. So that's how I plan to stay spooky. So anyway, Don't Breathe premiered at South by Southwest in March of 2016 and released theatrically later that year in August. With a budget of $9.9 million, it went on to gross $157.1 million worldwide, making it a sleeper hit. It was the biggest original horror debut of 2016 and the biggest original horror debut since The Conjuring in 2013. It currently holds an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, and the site's critical consensus states Don't Breathe smartly twists its sturdy premise to offer a satisfying, tense, chilling addition to the home invasion genre that's all the more effective for its simplicity. The movie also holds a rating of 7.1 out of 10 on IMDb and 71% on Metacritic. Don't Breathe also went on to win a Saturn Award for Best Horror Film, and Stephen Lang won a Fangoria Chainsaw Award for Best Supporting Actor. And I think he did a phenomenal job as the blind man, but we'll get more to that later. So Don't Breathe was directed by Fede Alvarez, co-produced by Sam Raimi and Robert Tappert, and co-written by Alvarez and Rodos Sagayas. Alvarez wanted to make a film that did things differently than his directorial debut, The Evil Dead remake in 2013. He wanted something original with a little blood, suspenseful, and grounded in reality. This was his response to critics who called Evil Dead too bloody, said it focused on shocking the audience too much, and that it was just another remake. In addition to this, Alvarez used this to craft Don't Breathe as a movie that took tired tropes and flipped them on their head, with the house being the best looking house in the neighborhood instead of the creepiest, also by telling the home invasion story from the perspective of the invaders, and also by giving the antagonist a disability instead of something that would make him more menacing. The film was shot by cinematographer Pedro Luque, and while the film does take place in Detroit, it was actually primarily filmed in Hungary, with only most of the exterior shots being filmed in Detroit. In fact, all of the interior shots in the blind man's home were shot on a soundstage where the crew built a replica of the house we see in the exterior shots. The production design was so good that some of the actors had a hard time remembering they were on set and not filming in a real house. I think Don't Breathe is a fantastic movie that's filled with suspense, tense moments, and doesn't let up once it gets going. When I first saw this movie back in theaters in 2016, it had me on the edge of my seat from beginning to end, and honestly, I can't think of another movie that did that to me, like ever, even Halloween. Most movies will have tense moments in between slower paced scenes, but Don't Breathe just kept amping the crazy higher and higher with little room for you to catch your breath. And after its home video release, I was constantly showing it to everyone who came to my house if they hadn't seen it before. After all the rewatches in years past, let's see if this movie keeps me on the edge of my seat and talk about Don't Breathe. The movie begins with an aerial shot of a suburban neighborhood, and as we move closer and closer, things get worse and worse until we see a woman being dragged down the street by a man. Next we see Money, played by Daniel Zavato, who also played Greg in It Follows, Rocky, played by Jane Levy, and Alex, played by Dylan Minnette, break into a house and disable the alarm. They start robbing the place, but Money also breaks things like a douche, and this idiot starts pissing all over the house, leaving his DNA behind. And this guy does a bunch of idiotic stuff throughout this movie. Afterwards, they drive through Detroit in Money's beat-up Camaro. They talk about how everyone they know is leaving Detroit, and it reminds me of my hometown, which is about 45 minutes from Detroit. When the economy went to shit in the mid-2000s, my hometown drastically changed for the worse, and everyone who could leave left. And a bunch of places I went to as a kid are abandoned or torn down now, and neighborhoods I lived in are falling apart and filled with crime. Anyways, back to the movie. Rocky and Money talk about leaving town once they get enough money to do so. Alex says he can't leave his dad though, and I gotta say I love the characters in this movie. 9 times out of 10 in horror movies and movies in general, you get characters that are either all good or all bad. And it makes for good storytelling, sure, because you have a clear protagonist and an antagonist, but I love when characters are both. Alex does a lot of horrible things, and he could get his dad in a lot of trouble because his dad works for a security company. And this is how the trio targets the houses they break into, because they get the keys to the houses and the codes to the alarm systems, which gives them a lot of time to steal what they need to from these houses. Despite all of this, Alex still cares about his dad and can't imagine leaving him behind. He seems like he's genuinely a person with a good heart that does awful things, and he's not the only character like this. Next, we follow Money to their fence, which is the person who buys stolen goods in order to sell them at a higher price and gain profit. I didn't know what that was until this movie. He tells Money that the stuff he brings him isn't really worth much, and that if he wants to make some real money, Money needs to steal actual money. Try saying that 10 times fast. Money's pissed, and the fence tells Money that there's a house that Money should target because the guy is sitting on a lot of money. Okay, I'm purposely saying Money now to troll at this point. Anyway, he meets up with Rocky and Alex and tells them about the house and that the man living there should have around $300,000 because his daughter was run over and killed by a rich girl, and her family settled with him. Alex declines though because they can get serious jail time if they steal more than $10,000. So far, all of the things that they have been stealing hasn't been anything worth close to that. Rocky and Money plead with him, saying they won't get caught, but Alex won't budge. And there's a deleted scene that shows Alex and Rocky talking more, and Alex explains that the things they steal are all stuff that can be claimed by insurance, and that because of this they aren't really stealing from people, but instead stealing from the big insurance companies that are ripping people off. I can see why they cut this scene, but it does help reveal why Alex is okay with certain crimes that they commit, and why he's against taking actual money from people. I also wonder, can't the cops trace the money if they do take it? I don't know, but either way, Rocky's disappointed that Alex won't help, and Money is pissed. Later, Rocky messages Alex, begging him to reconsider, and Alex would probably do anything for Rocky. Then we get to see Rocky's home life and find out that she has a bitch-ass mother who talks to Rocky like she's a piece of shit, but Rocky puts up with it and plans to take her little sister Dee Dee with her when she leaves town. And can I just say, this little girl's line delivery is atrocious. Thank God she only has less than a handful of lines. That's when Rocky gets a text from Alex saying that he'll go along with the plan, and Rocky promises her sister that she'll take her to California very soon. Later, the trio cases out the old man's house when we find out that he's the only person left living in this neighborhood. Everyone else abandoned their homes, and it's crazy that neighborhoods like this actually exist in America, where all the homes are abandoned and falling apart like a ghost town. Alex notices Rocky has a new tattoo and asks her why she got a ladybug tattoo. She tells him that when she was younger, her mom used to lock her in the trunk for crying about her dad leaving, and that one day a ladybug came along and it comforted her. And honestly, Rocky's mom might be the worst character in this movie. She's a mega fucking bitch. That's when this big-ass Rottweiler barks and jumps on the car, and then the old man calls him to him, and they continue walking. And this is where you find out that the old man, played by Stephen Lang, is fucking blind. These kids are planning on robbing a blind veteran and taking the money he received when his daughter was killed. Savage as fuck. Alex immediately points this out, and Money tells him one of my favorite lines from the movie.
Wait, is he blind?
He lost his sight in Iraq or something.
That's kind of messed up to rob a blind guy, isn't it?
Just because he's blind don't mean he's insane, bro.
That night, the group approaches the house, and you get a hilarious back and forth between Money and Alex, where Money says the lights are out, so the blind man must be asleep, and Alex says another one of my favorite lines. He says, he's blind, lights out don't mean anything. Meanwhile, Rocky smokes a cigarette and throws it on the ground because these people, for some reason, like leaving their DNA behind at the scene of the crime, like fucking amateurs. They have a hard time breaking in, though, because the blind man put in additional locks, making Alex's set of keys useless, and all of the windows are either boarded up or have bars on them. The blind man may be blind, but he knows he lives in Detroit. So Money slips the dog something to make it pass out, and you at least gotta give it to them for not killing the dog, right? Alex tries opening the kitchen door, but like the front door, his keys are useless because it's got added security. But because this is a movie, one window is not boarded up and free of bars. Rocky says she's small enough to climb through, but Alex is hesitant to send her alone. She breaks in and climbs through anyway, and Money tells Alex he needs to stay in the friend zone because Rocky is his girl, so you have some nice conflict going on between those two. Inside, a piece of glass from the window Rocky broke gets stuck to the bottom of her shoe, and as she walks, you can hear the glass tapping the floor with each step. When you watch this movie, you'll notice the sounds feel like they're amplified, which makes you feel like you have a heightened sense of hearing, like the blind man. Rocky disables the alarm and lets the others inside. They quickly search for the money, and they're pretty smart here because they take off their shoes and leave them by the kitchen so they don't make loud footsteps. And the cinematography here is great. We get this long shot of the trio searching through the first floor, and the camera goes in and out of all of the rooms, giving us a nice layout of the house. Money goes upstairs, and the camera follows him by going through the floor. Then we see the ventilation system, and then we end up on the second floor, and it all feels like one take. Obviously, there were cuts when the camera went through the floors, but it was hidden to make it feel like one continuous shot. The camera follows Money to the blind man's room, and the camera goes under the bed, and we see the blind man's gun strapped under the mattress. While all of this is going on, the blind man is sleeping with his TV on, which explains why he's probably not hearing the others breaking in. It's a home video of his daughter when she was a little girl playing in the park. Money looks down and starts prepping a homemade sleeping gas, and when he looks back up, the blind man is sitting up in his bed facing him. There's not much to the blind man, he's just a regular man. His presence and the way he looks here makes him very creepy and actually kind of scary though. He turns off the TV though and goes back to bed, allowing Money to place the gas in the room and get out of there. And even though the blind man is supposedly knocked out by the gas, you would think the trio would be quiet, but nope. These bastards are talking at a normal volume and being loud as fuck, banging on the basement door, which is where they think the money is, because they can't find it anywhere else and the basement door is locked with a special lock. And at this point, it kind of feels like they want the blind man to wake up. And to top things off, Money brought a fucking gun. This sets off Alex though, because this just became an entirely different crime. Money silences the gun with the bottle, and I'm wondering, would that even work? Who knows? But he shoots the lock and gets it open. Alex begs Rocky to leave with him, but Money mocks Alex for trying to crawl out of the friend zone and be her Romeo. Rocky decides to stay behind, and Alex leaves the house without both of them. But before Money and Rocky can go into the basement, the blind man comes in the room and asks who's there. And even though Money and Rocky stay silent, the blind man steps closer. Money tells the blind man not to move and even fires a warning shot though, and you think that the blind man is going to be this weak old man, but when he gets close enough to Money, he quickly overpowers him, pins him to the wall and gets the gun from him, and Rocky just watches and offers no help, which is exactly what I would do. I don't want none of what he's having. This is where Money shows he's not entirely selfish, because when the blind man asks how many people are with him, Money doesn't rat out anyone else and says it was just him. And then that's when the blind man shoots Money in the head, killing him instantly. Rocky hides in a nearby closet as the blind man freaks out, and she's great at staying quiet. I don't think I'd be able to do it because I gasp way too much at everything. And you kind of feel for the blind man here. Up until this point, the blind man was wounded from the war he fought in and left blind as a result. Then his wife dies, then his daughter gets run over and the family pays him off. And now somebody broke into his house to steal that money. And then to top it all off, he had to kill Money. He just can't catch a break. Alex heard all the gunshots and came back into the house to see what was happening. And he's a way better friend than I am, because once I heard gunshots, I would have been fucking gone. The blind man checks his money after all this, and it's revealed to be hidden in the wall in a safe in the closet that Rocky's hiding in. She watches him put in the code and make sure the money is there. Then he starts cleaning up his mess and locks the kitchen door with a padlock and boards up the bathroom window Rocky climbed through. And while all of this is going on, Alex has to evade the blind man, who's just centimeters from bumping into him at a lot of moments, and it's really suspenseful as hell. But then Rocky and Alex message each other, and thank God their phones are on silent. When I first saw this movie, I thought Alex's phone was going to make a noise and give away his location to the blind man, which added to the suspense. While the blind man goes into the basement, Alex and Rocky meet up, and Alex says that they should call the cops, but Rocky stops him and she shows him the safe and uses the code to open it, and props to her because I would have never remembered that code with everything going on. And now that they have the money, this is where they have to break out of the house, which is a nice twist to them breaking in. They decide to try the basement, and the blind man walks out before they can go in. They slowly back away and the floor creaks under Alex's foot. The old man stops and points the gun around the room, and it's another very suspenseful moment as Alex and Rocky stand there frozen with the gun pointed at them. The gun lingers on Rocky. Luckily for her though, Money's phone goes off, and of course this idiot's phone would make a loud noise. The blind man ends up shooting the phone, and when he discovers it's just a phone, he goes back to cleaning up Money's body, which gives Rocky and Alex the opportunity to go into the basement. Once they're inside though, they find a ladder instead of stairs, and that doesn't seem very blind friendly to me. But the filmmakers wanted the basement to seem like a dungeon instead of the average basement, which is why they opted for a ladder instead of stairs. Meanwhile, the old man smells the shoes in the kitchen, which means Money or Rocky have smelly-ass feet if the blind man could pick up their scent. It's probably Money though, because he looks like he doesn't shower every day. But it's a great reveal that Money wasn't alone to the blind man, because he grabs Money's shoes and discovers Rocky's shoes next to them, which makes him immediately go check on his money, and that's when he finds out the safe is empty, and now he's really pissed off. Down in the basement, Rocky and Alex go through a maze-like path using Rocky's phone as a light because Alex's phone is dead. They get to a room and the whole fucking ass girl jumps at them. And I was not expecting that when I first saw this movie because the trailers made it seem like the typical home invasion movie. And I love seeing people's reaction when I show them this movie for the first time. It's at this moment when the blind man is no longer the victim and is instead the antagonist of the movie. I love the way that they flip the script, and it's a satisfying twist because the blind man is no longer fully good and has a dark side to him like the other characters. The girl reveals that she's Cindy, the one who ran over the blind man's daughter, and he's been keeping her chained up in the basement for God knows how long. She's rigged the bells upstairs to alert the blind man if she's moving, and that's when he puts it together that whoever broke into his house with money is down there. Back in the basement, they hear the blind man walking through the house, and Alex says they need to go. And that's the smartest thing they could do right now, because I would have left that bitch too. I don't know her. Rocky proves, though, that she's got a good heart and she's not completely selfish, only caring about her and her sister. And she's got empathy for others because she also wants to help the girl escape. They find another safe and Rocky still remembers the code, so they open it and find the keys to all of the locks in the house, which allows them to free the girl and take her with them. They find the cellar door, which was locked from the outside earlier when they were trying to break in. And this is when the blind man flings it open from the other side and immediately starts shooting into the basement. One of the bullets hit Alex's ear, another hits Rocky's phone, and another one hits Cindy in the face, killing her because karma. And at first it seemed like this gun had a lot of bullets to me, but then I found out later that this type of gun can hold 15 rounds. After all this, Rocky and Alex hide while the blind man comes in the basement. And when he finds out he kills Cindy, he's devastated. You'd think that he was in love with her or something by the way that he reacts. Alex tells Rocky these keys they have, though, can open the front door, and they make a new plan to escape that way. So they book it, and the blind man starts shooting at them, but he misses because he's blind. And I have to say, he's really intimidating here the way that he looks. And to even the playing field, he shuts off all the power in the house, making it pitch black in the basement. Not only are Rocky and Alex running around the basement from the blind man, who knows his way around the house, but they also have to get through this maze and stay quiet because the blind man shoots towards them every time they make a noise. And the cinematography here is amazing. The film turns black and white, and every time the gun fires and there's light, it goes back to color for a split second. And Alex and Rocky need to shut the fuck up because they keep calling out to each other, which makes the blind man keep shooting at them. And this entire sequence is another tense, suspenseful moment because Rocky almost walks into the blind man at one point, and Alex calls out to her, and the blind man shoots again just a few feet away from her. So she was almost fucking dead. Since Alex can't shut the fuck up, though, the blind man finds him and chokes him. That's when he puts the gun to his head, and the sound design again is amazing because you can hear the skin sizzle from the gun being too hot from firing so much. The blind man pulls the trigger, and Alex is lucky as hell because the gun is empty. But is he lucky enough to crawl out of the friend zone now that money is dead? Let's find out. Alex manages to knock a shelf on top of the blind man, though, and find Rocky so they can get out of the basement. And once out of the basement, they jam a crowbar in the door and lock it. That's when you see the dog, who's awake now and in the house. Alex attempts to get the dog to stay where it is while Rocky tries the front door, and she must be slow or something because she has a hard time unlocking it. That's when the dog starts chasing them and knocks the crowbar out of place, and with nowhere left to go, they run upstairs and lock themselves in the dead daughter's room. Alex tries to set off the alarm with his remote, and Rocky tells him no. And Alex says that if the cops come, they won't care about the crimes Alex and Rocky committed because what the blind man was doing was way worse than what they did. And I'm like, hello? That's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. You would all be fucking going to jail. And after getting his gun from under the bed, the blind man and his dog start breaking into the room, which makes Rocky go through the vents. But Alex is too big to fit through, so when the blind man and the dog break into the room, the dog charges at Alex and he gets knocked out of the window. And honestly, this next part feels like a Jurassic Park Lost World reference here, because Alex lands on a skylight and with every move he makes, the glass cracks more and more. The dog follows Rocky into the vents and she falls down a shaft and gets knocked out cold. And rest in peace because it looked like she broke her neck. Meanwhile, the blind man shoots towards Alex because he can hear the glass cracking. Luckily, he misses Alex and just hits the glass, which causes Alex to fall into the kitchen. And Alex is getting fucked up in this movie. The blind man quickly comes downstairs and he and Alex start fighting each other. Alex manages to make the blind man drop the gun, but he gets really fucked up in the process as the blind man slams him into things, hits him with a shovel, chokes him out, and punches him multiple times in the face. And after Alex gets brutalized and beaten to a pulp, he lands next to Money's body, and the blind man takes a pair of shears and stabs into him. Rest in peace, Alex. Rocky wakes up though, and she starts making so much noise as she crawls through the vents. She probably could have stayed hidden if she would have just shut the fuck up. She nearly escapes too, but the blind man finds her and drags her out of the vents because she made so much noise. And not to sound like I'm glorifying violence against women, but the blind man does not go easy on her, and I love the movie for having the balls to go there. He stomps on her, punches her multiple times in the face, and chokes her until she passes out. And it makes the movie feel all the more realistic because in real life, the blind man wouldn't care that she was a woman. He would have been just as brutal with her as he was with Alex. After that though, Rocky wakes up chained in the basement, and the blind man talks for the first time and reveals that he's been keeping the other girl down there because he planned to have a baby with her, so she could give him a child as punishment for taking away his other child, and that she was already pregnant with this child. So he killed not only her, but his unborn child. And he says another line that I like, rich girls don't go to jail, which is great commentary on how the upper class gets away with a slap on the wrist on a lot of the crimes that they commit. It also reveals he's a tragic villain who became this way after life dealt him a shitty hand. And he totally sounds like Bane from Batman. I did want to know though how he was planning on raising this kid on his own without anyone else's help. Was he going to kidnap another girl and make her be the nanny? Anyway, now that Cindy's dead, the blind man plans to make Rocky take her place as punishment because in his mind, Cindy would have been alive if the others didn't break into his house, and he's crazy as fuck, and I love it. But surprise bitch, Alex is still alive. The blind man actually stabbed into Money's corpse and not Alex. Alex just passed out from the beating that he took. And Alex is like a cat with 9 lives. He was close to dying so many times now, and he keeps getting lucky. He manages to trap the dog in a room, and sorry not sorry, but he should have killed the dog. Why risk the potential of it coming after you again? Because if it catches you, it will kill you. Back downstairs, the blind man preps his frozen sperm to inseminate Rocky. He props her up in what looks like a homemade sex swing. She starts freaking out, and the blind man tells her he's not going to force himself onto her because he's not a rapist. He never forced himself on Cindy either. I'm like, oh, okay, then everything he's doing is totally fine. This is where he gets a turkey baster and fills it with a huge load that has hair in it, and it looks disgusting because it drips and everything as he walks towards Rocky, and turkey basters have never been the same for me after I watched this movie. He tells Rocky after 9 months she can have her life back, and then yeah, fucking right, because he's definitely gonna kill her after the baby's born. But before he can inseminate her, her Romeo comes just in time, and Alex hits the blind man with a sledgehammer. He frees Rocky, and then they chain up the blind man in his place. Rocky shoves the turkey baster deep in his throat, and it's nasty. Not many people can say they had a turkey baster filled with their own jizz shoved in their mouth. This is when Rocky wants to call the cops now, but Alex doesn't, and I can't with the back and forth. It happens so much in this movie. Alex explains, though, that the blind man can't turn them in because they can expose him for what he did, and that they can take the money without involving the cops. And he says that they can't kill him because their blood is all over the house, so they'll get caught real easily. So they leave the blind man down there, and they get upstairs and unlock the front door. And it seems like Alex is going to crawl out of the friend zone after all and ride off into the sunset with Rocky. As he opens the door, though, he gets 3 bullets to the back, which finally kills him. Rocky sees the blind man standing there, and I'm like, did you guys really think that trapping him in his own dungeon would work? He built it, so of course he's gonna know how to get out of it. They should have knocked him out or something, but anyway, Rocky bolts out of the house and mocks the blind man because he's useless outside, but because they didn't kill the dog, it starts chasing after Rocky. She manages to get to Money's car just in time because as the dog catches up to her, it's only able to rip the backpack with the money off her before it can do any real damage. Money still has the keys though, so she's stuck. She can't go anywhere. And it would suck to be that close to getting away and not being able to. But she's pretty good at thinking on her feet quickly, and she's able to get the dog in the trunk where she plans to trap it. When she sighs in relief though, the dog starts breaking out of the trunk. I cheered when she punched the dog in the face though, because they should have done that a long time ago. And after that, she's able to chain it to the car with tie downs. And also, I did notice, in the basement, the blind man slit her pants to make an opening for the turkey baster, but now her pants don't have a slit, so I definitely want these magical pants that can stitch themselves. Rocky's able to escape the car, though, and gets the money after another suspense-filled scene, but before she can run, the blind man walks up behind her and knocks her out. After that, the blind man drags Rocky back to his house, and now we're back at the opening scene from the beginning of the movie. Once they get to the house, Rocky's given up, it looks like, and she lays next to Alex and tells him she's sorry. But when all hope is lost, a ladybug catches her eye and flies on the remote, which gives her one last idea. She sets off the alarm, which makes the blind man freak out because of the loud noise, It doesn't make a lot of sense though, because he goes to turn it off, but he can't. It's like he forgot the code or something. But this is a movie, so here we are. He starts shooting around his house, hoping to hit Rocky, but she dodges him easily. She ends up beating the fuck out of him with the crowbar and knocks him into the basement. And he lands next to the gun, and then it shoots him. And this is exactly why you should have basement stairs instead of basement ladder. We get another nice shot as the blind man's eyes shine in the pitch black as Rocky closes the basement door, followed by a shot of her silhouette in front of the window as she gets the money. Rocky finally escapes as the cops race down the street, and somehow they didn't see her running. I guess Detroit's finest. Also, aren't her shoes still at the scene of the crime? So they would have known that a woman was there. Just a nitpick of mine. With the $300,000 all to herself, Rocky's able to take her younger sister to California and leave Detroit and their bitch-ass mom behind. I hope she also buys her some acting lessons too, cause she needs it. Before they get on the bus though, Rocky sees a news report about the incident and finds out the blind man is still alive and in the hospital. But like Alex said, he can't turn Rocky in because she could expose him, so the blind man never reports anything stolen and says that Money and Alex were the only ones there. So to the world it looks like he was an innocent man protecting his home and defending himself. And if this were any other movie, I'd say Rocky would be living in fear for the rest of her life that he'd come after her. But since he's blind, I think she'll be just fine. And that's Don't Breathe. The filmmakers originally wanted to go for a darker ending where Alex never rescued Rocky from the basement, but I like the ending they went with in the final product. And I fucking love this movie. I think Fede Alvarez nailed all the points that he wanted to hit by making a suspense-filled movie that was the complete opposite of The Evil Dead. I was on the edge of my seat from the beginning to the end, even after multiple rewatches, and I'm always entertained from start to finish. The story's simple, and I love how they told it from the perspective of the burglars instead of the usual trope of making the occupants of the home the main characters and the burglars the bad guys. It took many tropes and flipped them on their head. I felt like it kept raising the stakes, and it had non-stop action-packed suspense-filled moments one after another. Once things started going, the characters never really stopped to catch their breath. They were always on the go. I also thought the characters were great. None of them were all good and none of them were all bad. They felt like real people because every person, no matter how good they are, they have a dark side. And I love how the movie played with that. It could have been mishandled very easily and we ended up with no likable characters to root for, but I was rooting for Rocky and Alex to get out of there the whole time. And it's partly due to their incredible acting. I thought everyone but the little sister did an amazing job acting in this movie, and I can see why Stephen Lang won an award for his acting. The cinematography was done really well, especially in the basement sequence where the lights were turned out. And the production design was good too. I love how they made the basement into a maze and a dungeon. And the vents that Rocky had to climb through made you feel claustrophobic. It really does look and feel like a house and not like a set that was built on a soundstage. On top of that, it kind of has this sturdy feel to it with most of the locations. Like when Money visits their fence in the neighborhood the blind man's house is in. Oddly enough, the filmmakers didn't do anything extra to the neighborhood for the movie. It's really abandoned and falling apart in real life. And the music is pretty unique too. Raquel Banos scored the film with his own handmade instruments instead of going the common route that most movies use. I suggest any film score lovers to check out the deleted scenes on this movie because it's pretty amazing to see the type of instruments he made to create the sounds for this movie. And he did it all in Tucson, Arizona, which is only a few hours away from where I live. The filmmakers wanted to go with a score that made it feel like the house was whispering sometimes, and I feel like it was another thing that they nailed and got right. With all of that said, I have no problem giving Don't Breathe a 10 out of 10. It was original, stands out from all the other home invasion horror movies to me, and it checks off everything I want in a horror movie. 4 years later, and it's still one of my favorite horror movies of the 2010s, and because it had such a positive reaction with critics and audiences on top of being a box office success, there's actually plans to make a sequel titled Don't Breathe Again. It's supposed to start filming this April if things go according to plan. Do I think this movie needs a sequel? Not at all. I think it was a perfect one-and-done movie. But if they can bring the same amount of passion, care, talent, and creativity into making the second movie, then I'll be excited to see what the follow-up film will be about. For the favorites for this movie, I'll pick between the suspenseful moments because I feel like this movie was filled with them. I think that down in the basement when it's pitch black, that's my favorite moment of this movie. It kept me on the edge of my seat and I loved the cinematography. And I like how they played with the light each time that the gun was shot and putting it back into color. And I think that the actors did really well. Alright, I've blown this movie off enough, so let me go ahead and close this out for you guys. Thanks for listening to Talk Some Horror. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. If you're new to the podcast and like what you've heard, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and leave a review. If you want to interact with the show, you can find Talk Some Horror on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this movie. You can also become a patron over on my Patreon if you want to help pick future episodes and gain access to exclusive content. If you need links, you can find them down in the description or by visiting talksomehorror.com. For the month of February, I'm going to be covering horror movies centered around love stories. Join me next week as I cover Ready or Not, the movie that blew me away last year with how fun it was. Until then, stay spooky, creeps.